Welcome to Church Unfiltered with Dr. Anthony Cobbs, a leadership podcast brought to you by Breakthrough Ministry Consulting.
Thank you once again for tuning in to Church Unfiltered. We are powered by Breakthrough Ministry Consulting. If you and your church need help with anything with ministry strategy, with program planning, even on preparation and the questions to ask as you plan on reopening after the COVID experience, please feel free to give us a call. You can email us at info@breakthroughonline.org, and we will be more than happy to help you as you help others. We thank you for tuning into this particular episode. We are looking at leadership and trust. But we do have a listener question. We want to open up with our listener question. But before we do that, we are so appreciative of each and every one of you. People have been adding on, subscribing, and leaving reviews and ratings. We thank you for each and every one of you who have joined the Church Unfiltered family. We're so grateful.
Welcome to Church Unfiltered with Dr. Anthony Cobbs, a leadership podcast brought to you by
as people
Breakthrough
have listened to
Ministry
episodes,
Consulting.
and we're again just truly grateful for this opportunity and excited about things that are to come. We are working behind the scenes, booking some guests so we can have some a few episodes in which we will have a guest that we will interview in the area of leadership, in the area of church leadership in particular. And so we're looking forward to that. I'm excited about announcing that in the coming days. Today we have a listener question. This listener question comes from Nebraska. And the question is, what is the most challenging part of being a church consultant? What is the most challenging part of being a church consultant? And I'll just answer this in this simple way. But I think one of the things that there are many things that are challenging about being a church consultant, first and foremost, is convincing people of the need for a consultant. A lot of times in ministry leadership and church leadership, we kind of learn as we go, or we copy and paste oftentimes. And so the idea and the concept of a consultant is still relatively new for many churches, and someone to go in and advise. But what people don't realize oftentimes is that that's really nothing unusual. It's nothing that is anti-spiritual or anything along those lines. The Bible tells us that in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. There's nothing wrong with having people to advise, people to offer input. That's a great thing, especially for leaders who may not know what moves to make. As they seek the Lord, there's nothing wrong with seeking wise counsel as well. But I will also add to this, I think one of the most challenging parts of being a church consultant that I have bumped into in particular is when I work with the team. I work with the pastor and a team of people in whatever capacity. They may call me in to work with their youth ministry or their Christian education department, or whatever the case may be, or for overall strategy. I'm a licensed strat-op facilitator, so sometimes people will call me in for that. But what I do is I go in and I work with pastors, and what we do, especially with the strat-op process, is we look for what's called the breakthrough moment. When I'm working with these teams, whether it's over a day for a workshop or if it's over 2 days, we're looking for what's called a breakthrough moment. Consultants, when we go in, we're looking for that aha moment, that breakthrough moment in which a team is finally able to get to the root cause of certain issues or certain things that may be hindering them from being the best team that they can possibly be. And when we get to that breakthrough moment, that's a pivotal moment, because that is the essence of what can change and shape and develop that team into a greater team. Here's the frustration that I bump into often. I have bumped into this often when reaching that breakthrough moment. Oftentimes what happens is that the pastor or a key ministry leader, a key influential leader, whether it's the pastor or someone else, tends to be the one who stifles that breakthrough moment. It's like a candle is lit and that person blows it out. And a lot of times that happens because that breakthrough moment sometimes is a sensitive issue that arises, or it gets to the very core. And sometimes that breakthrough moment reveals that leadership is the cause or the roadblock to progress. And so that's very uncomfortable oftentimes for leaders or ministry leaders or someone that is influential. I've seen it time and time again. When it's uncomfortable for that pastor, for that ministry leader, then that breakthrough moment is suddenly reversed. And sometimes I've even had situations where the meeting was even stopped or the meeting was paused because that person could not handle that revelation, if you will, that revelation of information that came forth from that breakthrough moment. So that's a frustrating aspect of church consulting, because when you get to a place like that, when you get to a breakthrough moment, when I'm doing a workshop with the church or doing a workshop with a staff or whatever the case might be, when we get to a breakthrough moment and the leader stifles it or reverses it, then what that does is it sets everything back. It's hard to even continue on when that happens. There are different ways that we do that, but in the consulting world, of course, we know to do that. But that's one thing we look for. In consulting, in advising, and guiding. It's trying to make sure that that doesn't happen, that the leader doesn't reverse the work, if you will. So for me, that's probably one of the hardest, the most difficult things in consulting is, two things. Number one, convincing people that it is a good, or convincing churches that consulting is needed, is necessary. And then also just making sure that when we reach a breakthrough moment, that the leader does not reverse or stifle that moment and reverse all the work that took place. So those are a couple of things that are hindrances or roadblocks when I'm doing consulting, church consulting. Love doing what I do. This is what I do. I enjoy it. A lot of people think that all I'm doing is one particular job, but I do so many different things, just working with pastors behind the scenes, helping pastors in various ways. And I really, really enjoy doing that. That's why I'm here. That's why we have Church Unfiltered. And I am your host, Dr. Anthony Cobbs. And again, excited for you being here on today. And we're going to go right into our content, because I just mentioned something with answering that question, and how sometimes what can happen is that a breakthrough moment can come, or leaders are gathered together to strategize. And the leader, the main leader, can be the cause of all of that effort being reversed. And I encourage you to go back and listen to the previous episode. We talk about several things that happen when a leader comes in and does what we call swoop and poop, and comes in and changes things when things have been progressing. Maybe a staff is gathered together to plan some things, and then a person comes in and changes things. Or there are various things. And listen, this is not a podcast to beat up on leaders or anything like that. We are here to help leaders. We are here to help leaders grow, to help leaders develop. And this is an outlet that I believe the Lord led me to do, to help pastors, ministry leaders. We want to just grow and be the very best that we can be. Church staff, we want to grow and be what God has called us to be. In order to do that, a leader must have the trust of followers, and earning trust and maintaining trust is oftentimes a difficult thing. I just want to go off of a couple of things that I want to share with you on today. This won't even be a long podcast today. We're going to, not that all the others are long, but this is going to be a straight to the point podcast. I want to talk about trust in leadership. Leaders, can we trust you? Can we truly trust you? And oftentimes we look at leaders and we see them in positional authority, but yet there is suspicion of that authority. Even in today's climate right now, we are even facing that in light of the COVID experience. We are looking for leadership, for guidance, on a national level, on a local level, and in the church. We are looking for guidance from leaders. And the reality is, I've told someone this the other day, everyone claims to be an expert, but really no one knows the answers. And so you're hearing a lot of people present, well, this is how you do it, and this is what we need to do, and this is when you need to reopen, and this is how you do it, and this is what. And the truth is, we started this whole season off with the word unprecedented. So you really have to ask yourself the question, how is it that I can get advised, I can get counsel on certain things, but no one is an expert on how to do this type of ministry. We're trying to figure it out. So we're coming together. We're hearing from other voices, from people who are experts in leadership and strategy, and trying to figure this thing out. But what is true is that the leader must be trusted. The leader must be trusted. And this is the premise of what I want you to get today. I want you to get this today, that in order for a leader to have trust, a leader must be willing to be transparent. In order for a leader to have trust, a leader must be willing to be transparent. Transparency is such a vital key to earning trust with followers. And if people are not forthright, if people are forthcoming, if they do not share things, if they're not open, then suspicion can develop. One of my favorite books and resources is the book, The Speed of Trust from Stephen Covey. And that's really what I want to spend this time on this podcast, this episode. I want to look at Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey wrote this book, The Speed of Trust. It's a bestseller, been out for a while, but it's so applicable to even now, to today, when you're trying to lead your church back to opening up, or you're trying to assure a staff, or you're trying to work with your coworkers, or whatever it might be that you who are listening right now are having to do. It's so important for you to have the trust of your followers, and trust can be earned through transparency. Are you willing to be open? Are you willing to share? Are you willing to be truthful? Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Many of us don't even know. We don't know. Well, none of us know what the days lie ahead. We don't know what's going to happen in the days coming up. And the truth is, even though we don't know what might lie ahead, we may feel pressured. Get this, we feel pressured to seem as if we know what we're talking about, to seem like we have it all together. There's this pressure on leadership that we have to keep it together. We know what we're talking about. And sometimes the best thing to do is to say, guys, you know what? I don't know. I don't know what to do. Here's what I suggest to you as a pastor, as a ministry leader, as a church staff. If your church is not doing this, please share this with your pastor and make sure, do a survey, conduct a survey of your church members. Conduct a survey of your church members. This was recommended to me by our marketing director at the church that I attend and work with. And one of the things that we talked about with that is that you're hearing the voice of the people, and it helps to calm the people because they are giving input. That's one way to earn trust. We don't have all the answers, but we can be transparent and say, hey, we don't have all the answers, but we want to hear from you to help us to reach the answers or to get those answers. So here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about trust. Again, trust can come through transparency. But while leaders are searching for ways to grow a church, to mobilize volunteers, even in this COVID season, you're still trying to mobilize people. You're still trying to get things together and build a great staff or keep a great staff. One of the questions that is rarely asked is, can I be trusted? Leaders hardly ever ask themselves that question. Can they trust me? Oftentimes the questions that we'll ask ourselves as leaders is, do they hear me? Or am I clear? Or am I getting through? And one of the biggest questions that we ask ourselves is, am I being effective? But we rarely ask the question, do they trust me? Do they trust me? Do the followers that I have, that I'm responsible for, the staff that I have, do they trust me? As a leader, trust is an essential part of how people perceive you. If they can't trust you, they will have trouble following you. Ministry leaders, church leaders sometimes make the mistake of thinking that their spiritual position earns them the right to be trusted. Jim Rayburn, the founder of Young Life organization that presents the gospel of Jesus Christ to adolescents here in America, all over the world, actually. That Young Life teaches their leaders, one of the things that they implement and ingrain in the mind of their leaders is that you have to earn the right to be heard. You have to earn the right to be heard. You ought to write that down. You have to earn the right to be heard. Just because you are the pastor doesn't mean people are listening to you. Just because you are a ministry leader over a certain ministry in the church doesn't mean people are listening to you. Just because you are a supervisor at your job doesn't mean people are listening to you. You have to earn the right to be heard. Okay? Very important. Paul in Corinthians told the Corinthians, follow me as I follow Christ. He said that in 1 Corinthians 11:1. Follow me as I follow Christ. Notice what he did there. He said, I want you to follow me, but I want you to follow me as I follow Christ. You can trust me because I'm trusting in Jesus. He had to earn the trust and respect of the Corinthian believers, and he understood that it took more than just the spiritual authority he had as an apostle. He had the spiritual authority as an apostle, but he had to earn the right to be heard. He had to earn the right as an individual, as a person, as a man, in order for them to listen to what he was telling them. Okay. So this book by Stephen Covey, The Speed of Trust. I want you to pick that up if you haven't picked it up. If it's not already in your library, you ought to get it. Covey suggested that there are 13 behaviors that leaders must model to earn, reclaim, or maintain trust with their followers. I'm not going to go through all 13 in depth, but I'm going to list them. I want you to hear these 13 behaviors, but pick up that book and we'll talk about a couple of them. Number 1, talk straight. Talk straight. Number 2, demonstrate respect. Number 3, create transparency. There it is. That's that transparency part. Number 4, right wrongs. If there's some wrongs that you have done, correct those wrongs. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Number 5, show loyalty. Loyalty. As the leader, leaders oftentimes look for loyalty from their followers, but are you being loyal to them? Very important to remember. Number 6, deliver results. Results. When you deliver results, people trust you. Number 7, get better. Get better. Number 8, confront reality. Number 9, clarify expectations. Clarify expectations. That's such a big one right there. Number 10, practice accountability. Number 11, listen first. Listen first. Don't do all the talking. Listen first. Number 12, keep commitments. And number 13, extend trust. Do you see how significant these 13 behaviors of trusted leaders are? Look at number 1, talk straight. If you have something to say, just say it. The Bible says, let your yea be yea, your nay be yea. If you have something to say, just say it. In other words, don't try to skate around what you want to say, or even worse, don't go behind someone's back and say different things. If you have something to say, just say it. People will appreciate you being open and direct and honest, and you will earn trust. They will be more, they may be upset with you, or they may not like what you say, but at least they will know that you are an upfront, direct person. What about number 4? Right wrongs. Here we are in a pandemic pause. We have opportunity to be able to look and examine things in a way that we never have before. With the time that we didn't have at the beginning of the year, we didn't know we were going to have this much time. So maybe this is an opportunity to right some wrongs. Maybe you as a leader have behaved a certain way. Maybe you have conducted yourself a certain way or come across a certain way. This is a good time to practice being better, to practice making some corrections. Perhaps it is apologizing to the staff, or it's mending relationships with the church member. I don't know. It could be different things, but now's a good time to right some wrongs. And here's the thing. In order to right some wrongs, you have to be willing to admit that you can be wrong, or you have been wrong. Sometimes what we as leaders, we get this complex that we are not wrong, or if we are wrong, This is important. I need you to write this down. Sometimes what happens as leaders is we expect everyone to bend to the wrongs that we exhibit. We expect everyone to just adjust to the fact that we do things a certain way. And while there is a certain amount of that, of course, if you're a leader, you have your idiosyncrasies, you have your flaws. There's certain things. Okay, we know that's the person. They're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We all get along. We all work together. But I'm talking about when you knowingly impose your flaws and frailties upon those followers and expect them and demand that they adjust, but yet you don't extend the same grace to them. You don't extend the same thing to them. Right some wrongs in your life. Do you as a leader admit mistakes and do something about it? Very important. Very important to right some wrongs. Number 5 is show loyalty. Show loyalty. Loyalty, again, is a two-way street. You expect people to be loyal to you. You need to be loyal to them. Here's one way that we make sure that we do this. The question was asked from our listener question. One of the things that's frustrating in church consulting, when I see pastors and leaders threaten the job security of people on staff, that's also something. It reminds me of a parent that keeps threatening their child. Don't make me come over there. Don't make me. If you keep doing that, I'm going to do. Well, that's a threat. I mean, it's a threat. But this is different in this sense that what begins to happen, even in that parent scenario, the child even begins to learn, okay, you keep on threatening me. If you either going to do something or you're not. And the same thing in a church setting or a corporate setting, when that leader continues to threaten the job security of that person, who wants to be up under that kind of pressure? Who wants to deal with that when every week you hear a threat about your job? And here's what the complex is. The complex is that the pastor or the leader begins to believe that they are the ones employing that person or those persons. The church does that, not the individual. Okay. So people need to see loyalty. Loyalty is we are all employed. So if I'm the pastor, I'm the executive pastor, I'm the whatever, we're all employed by the church. So it is not a business. It's not a for-profit business in which the pastor hired people and is paying people out of his own pocket or out of his profit. Okay. So show loyalty. It's important to do that. And one of the clear ways to do that is to defend people, is to stand up for people and not let people get run down behind the scenes and things like that. Show loyalty. Okay. All right. A couple more and then we'll move on. All right. So clarify expectations. In this season, you can practice that. Clarify expectations. One of the things that I am doing with pastors that I'm working with during this pandemic is talking to them about definitive statements. Are you clearly stating to your congregation what your plans are? And if you don't know the plan, again, are you clearly stating, I don't know the answer to that? We are going to find out. This is how we're going to get to the answer. But are you using definitive statements? For instance, are you saying to your congregation, we are not going to open up at least until June 1, and then we'll examine and see what the recommendations are and how safe things are. We will be closed through May 30th. I mean, just something like that. That is a definitive statement. And if you don't have that, you're going to have ambiguity, and ambiguity breeds mistrust. Because if people don't have the answers, they'll start trying to figure out answers for themselves. So it's important to clarify expectations. But then even in a normal setting, if we didn't have all of this going on, or even while we have all of this going on, what are your expectations? For instance, right now, your staff might be scattered all over the place, or your volunteers are what are your expectations for them right now? You have a team of volunteers. What are you doing with them right now? Are your expectations clear? Are you clarifying expectations? Because again, ambiguity breeds mistrust. Practice accountability. Are you practicing accountability? Who are you as a leader? Who are you accountable to? And do the people that follow you know that? Very important. And then extend trust. Extend trust. As leaders, we talk about this. We can talk about this in almost every episode. As a leader, you need to be able to extend trust, delegate, allow people to do the job that you have hired them to do. You agreed, you signed off on them getting hired in that position. Let them do the job. Here is a big thing. Now is not the season for micromanagement. Instead, now is a season for empowering others. Now, you do need to be aware of what's happening, but what is happening even in this pandemic season is that parameters have been blurred. And so it's important to make sure that you as a leader, you extend trust. You can't do it all yourself. Don't try. You're going to do the opposite of what the benefit that could happen here in this season is that instead of you trying to do everything, now is the time to empower other people. Because if you try to do everything, it's going to take a toll on you. If you as a leader never extend trust to those under you, you are likely creating a culture of suspicion. You're creating a culture of suspicion. Can we trust you? These 13 behaviors, I just emphasized a few of them, but these 13 behaviors, if you go through Covey's book, The Speed of Trust, and match up your own leadership style and begin to look, how do you fare in those 13 areas? Very important for you to think about that. Very important for you to look at that. And I think that one of the things that we fail to do oftentimes, is to recognize the need to always work on trust. Why do I say that? You have to always work on trust. It is not, remember what I said that Jim Rayburn, the founder of Young Life, he said you have to earn the right to be heard, or Young Life teaches that. You have to earn the right to be heard. Just because they were listening to you last month don't mean they're listening to you now. You have to continue to work on trust. It's a relationship. And people are looking for you to be a leader. People are looking for you to be consistent. People are looking for you to be loyal and all the things, those behaviors that we just mentioned. They're looking for that from you, just like you're looking for them to do their job. They're looking for you to do yours and to do it well. Very important for you to remember that. Covey goes on and talks about credibility and all of that. I want you to get that resource, because it's so important for you to understand what he is talking about, the essence of what he's talking about, and how you earn trust. And I'm gonna close this episode out with those 4 cores of credibility that he talks about. I'm just gonna ask you the questions, and I'll provide the resource for you. If you want this directly, email us at info@breakthroughonline.org, and we'll send the transcript out to you of this particular episode. But the 4 cores of credibility, he is simply asking these questions. Number 1, integrity. Are you congruent? How's your integrity? You earn trust with people by maintaining integrity. Core number 2, intent. What's your agenda? We talked about that in the previous episode. It's important for leaders to make sure that they have the right agenda, because your followers know whether or not you are operating with the right agenda or not. Your followers know that. And people won't tell you that, but again, the higher you go in leadership, the more filtered the information. And I'm here to help you with that, because people will know if you are not operating with God's agenda, but instead your own. Core 3, the capabilities of credibility. Are you relevant? Are you relevant? My goodness, that's a loaded question. Are you relevant? Remember what I said, there are several questions that people ask themselves, pastors ask themselves, and one of the things that they ask themselves, am I effective? That is a great question to ask. You have to self-assess. Are you being relevant to the times? Are you relevant to your congregation? Do you really know what's happening with them? Are you relevant? Because you earn trust by being relevant. And people know that they can count on you and they'll get a word from you that will be applicable to their life. And then the last core that Covey talks about is results. What's your track record? What's your track record? Just because you've been successful in one area doesn't mean that people trust you in all areas. Did you get that? You may have been successful in finance, but people are looking for you to be trustworthy in their secrets, in their private information. They don't care that you built buildings and did all sorts of, they don't care. They just want to know, can you keep a secret? And so it's important for us to understand that trust, you have to ask yourself questions like this and look and examine. Do you demonstrate those 13 behaviors? And can you say to your people, like Paul said to the Corinthians, follow me as I follow Christ? Very important. Leaders, can we trust you? Especially in this season, because your trustworthiness will determine will play a major role. Here it is, will play a major role in whether or not your people come back. Now, I know that may seem like a lot. That's a loaded statement right there. But what you're demonstrating now and what they're seeing now, because this is a stripped down version of the church, are they seeing you just genuinely concerned about their well-being? Or are we just concerned about getting back to the building? A lot of your trustworthiness will determine a lot in regard to whether people will come back. Are you trustworthy? Can we trust you? If we thank God for those ministry leaders, those pastors, those church leaders, thank God for his hand upon you. We thank God for your leadership and that the Lord is using you to do tremendous things. Please, please make sure that you understand that you have to continually work on earning and maintaining trust. Thank the Lord for each and every one of you listening on today to Church Unfiltered, to this episode of Leaders. Can you be trusted? What a great question and things we want to examine. We again encourage you to get that resource, The Speed of Trust. He uses that premise that it takes a while to earn trust, but you can lose trust in a matter of moments. Keep that in mind. And we thank you. We ask that you tune in again on the next episode. Make sure you have subscribed to this podcast. Tell a pastor, tell a church staff member about this particular podcast. Make sure you go, if you are an Apple user, go and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And we thank you for tuning in once again to Church Unfiltered. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Cobbs. God bless you and keep you is our prayer.
Thank you for listening to Church Unfiltered with Dr. Anthony Cobbs. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. For more resources related to today's topic, visit churchunfiltered.com or follow Dr. Anthony Cobbs on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.